So you may ask, if I'm agile and I need to be able to respond and adapt and change, why do I need a roadmap? After all, a roadmap sounds like something that's very long term, that's going to lock me in. So the question is, when and why should you use a roadmap to help you with your agility? Hey friends, I'm Ahmed, a skilled agile and productivity coach based in the UK. On this channel, we cover productivity, agility, and joy. This is the 11th video in the PI Planning for Beginners series, where I cover step by step everything you need to do to run an amazing PI planning event. And in this video, we're going to look at how and when we should use roadmaps to help us with our PI planning events and how it fits in the big picture. So if you think about it, when we look at Agile, when we work in things called iterational sprints or time boxes, and typically when we're looking at a Scrum or a scaled Agile program, we work in 2-week time boxes. Now within these time boxes, this is the duration that we actually give our teams to actually deliver something hopefully of value. And these valuable chunks or requirements, if you like, are sometimes referred to as user stories. Now within each 2-week period, we may have a number of these small user stories or chunks that need to be delivered within that. Here's the problem. Even though we are delivering each of these chunks individually, how do we know that these go to make up the right vision? And how do we know that they're going to make up the right elements and build the right elements at the right time, or at least provide us an indication of things that may be happening in the future as well? There's some things that have a longer lead time as well, and so having an insight and a view of what's coming up in the future can only be helpful as well. Now where the challenge occurs is when we try to be too prescriptive about what this actual roadmap looks like. So we need to find a balance between having enough detail and information but not having too much. So let's have a look at some of the inputs into a good roadmap. Let's have a look then at what an example of a roadmap actually looks like, and let's see how we can apply it to our program increment and to our agile release train. When we're looking at a roadmap, it's very important to know that actually there are a number of things that we need to have in advance. The first thing we need to have as input is we need to be clear on what our overall vision is, what our goals are, and what we wish to achieve. We also want to have some kind of indication of timeline as well. In addition to that, we want to have some idea of some of the major chunks, if you like, or epics or features or stories. If you want to understand what those are, you probably wouldn't drop down into the story level, but any of those epics or features that you might have that might want to be in the roadmap, then you would want to have some information on that. So I'm just going to call them chunks just to keep it agnostic. And so we would want to bring in this kind of ideas and this information into our roadmap. Now, once we bring this information in there, we then have a possibility of actually putting together something that can actually help us to determine what we should be doing in each PI as well. So let's have a look at how we would do that. Now, when we look at roadmaps, there are 3 different types of roadmaps within the Scaled Agile framework, and generally what I find useful when we're looking at Agile at scale. And the first one is the PI roadmap. That's the Program Increment Roadmap. And now what the Program Increment Roadmap shows is basically across 3 PIs, 3 program increments, what does the horizon look like, so that we can actually make sure that we are building the right thing at the right time, and we can get an indication of where we are actually going. So the PI roadmap is really very simple in terms of what it looks like. It's a very simple tool, but don't let its simplicity fool you or cause you not to use it. So effectively all it is effectively it's columns that actually represent each program increment. So you've got a column for the first program increment, you've got a column for the second one, and we call column for the third one. Let's just call them PI 1, 2, 3 for argument's sake. Now, once we've done our program increment planning, we would have a committed program increment. Now, the difference between our first PI, if you like, in our roadmap and the remaining ones is these are more like forecasts, okay? So we're not committed to those. Those are things that may be appearing on the horizon, but basically we are not committing to those at the moment, because otherwise what you end up with is basically a queue or a locked in waterfall plan, and we certainly don't want to do that. However, we still do want to have an indication of where we're going, making sure that we are on the right track, making sure if there's any adjustments we need to do, we can do that as well. And we can look at that and we can work that out. That is our, if you like, our guide or our map across the different program increments. And I'll show you some examples on the screen as well. But before we get into the examples, there are a couple of things I'd just like to explain to you over here. So over here, we could very well have epics, we could have features, or we could even have items that are not actually defined as requirements at this stage as well. Remember, this is aspiration, this is linked into our vision, and this is something that could yet be to be defined. But we do want to have some indication of the kind of timelines and other things as well, so that we can actually put them in. The other thing that I would like to say is that this roadmap, we want it to be emergent. So what I mean by that is we want greater flexibility in Slack over here and a little bit less over here, because as we go further out into the future, there's going to be more and more ambiguity, more and more unknown, and we need to be able to cater for that as well. Okay, fantastic. So that's what you have is a PI roadmap. Now that is very useful at the Agile release train level. I would expect this to be brought into and maintained and updated after your PI planning event, and for before your next PI planning event, you'd want to be bringing this in your preparation, making sure you're preparing the right thing. You want to be keeping this up to date to see if things fall out and how that impacts later on other parts of your roadmap. So it's important to try and keep that up to date as well. But it does factor as one of the inputs into your preparation for your PI planning event. So it's very important to make sure that we have this in a good state. Now, in addition to the PI roadmap, we also have a solution roadmap that is sitting at the solution train. So you may have multiple Agile release trains where it's coming together. What does the overall roadmap for that look like? And across value streams, we have the portfolio roadmap. And so these are of a longer horizon. As I said, your PI roadmap may be between 1 to 3 PIs, depending upon how long your PIs actually are. That's going to vary the duration of your roadmap, but typically it's around 3 PIs is what I find useful, and that's what's recommended as well. Your solution and your portfolio roadmaps are longer and can be up to between 1 to 3 years. Let's take all that information and let's have a look and see how we would apply that to our Justice Inc. example. Over here on the screen, what you see our big epic. So this is the thing, this is the vision that we actually had. We wanted to deliver all of this. We've got some functionality and some features that we have delivered over here. We have split them out. Maybe we've delivered them or not delivered them, doesn't matter. But if you look at the roadmap, what you can actually see is this is what we have planned for our first PI. This is what we are expecting to plan for to come in our following PI. And as you can see, some of them may not be defined that clearly as well, but it's a placeholder. It's a reminder that this is the key elements that are needed to fall into the different program increments. So you want to ask yourself, is there any preparation work? Is there anything that has long lead time that needs to be done up front? And you might want to think about using that as well. So I hope you found that useful. There you have it, roadmaps, and using them for your PI planning event. Make sure that your backlog fits in with a wider vision, that if you do one PI and you do that correctly, and you do the second PI, you do that correctly, and do the third PI, you do that correctly, guess what? Hopefully we've achieved our overall vision. So it is a very important glue, if you like, across the different PIs. I find them very useful. I encourage you to use them and to keep them up to date. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Till I see you then, love learning, keep growing, and don't forget to bring the joy. Take care and see you later. Bye.